I'll call the meeting to order of the Library Board Committee. This is Wednesday, November 16, 2022, 6:05. This is an in-person at prime time building meeting. It's at 1059 Somerset Avenue. The agenda is subject to revisions prior to the meeting. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at this meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Could you all please stand for the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first agenda item is the review, evaluation, and recommendations of bid received on Monday, November 14th. Has everybody had an opportunity to take a look at the would you like to, Joe, elaborate on the bid?
Yes, actually, Holly ran this bid.
Yes.
Alright. So as we discussed at the prior meeting, we went out to bid for carpentry services for the envelope of 207 Main Street. We had about 5 bidders register. 3 bidders were at the pre-bid meeting that Ken and Jocelyn were able to join. And we had 1 bidder who submitted, and that was Plan B Construction. I done a review of their bid. I've checked their, done an arithmetic check just to make sure everything checks out. And I also have contacted 3 references. The New Bedford Housing Authority, which they've done similar envelope repairs on several buildings there. The Town of Berkeley, their library, they've done envelope repairs, and it looks like they may have done trim and socket work there, and the Nantucket Public Schools. So I'm still waiting to hear back from the Nantucket Public Schools, but I've gotten glowing recommendations from the others, and just knowing that you have good working relationship with them.
Correct.
I'm comfortable saying that they are the lowest responsible and responsive bidder.
You were commissioner when they did projects in town.
Correct. So Plan B Construction came to town through a bid request previously. And since then, they've done at least 6 projects in town. So they're well known to me. I have nothing but praise for them. All jobs have come in on time, on budget. There was 1 change order for 1 job that was for unforeseen circumstances. But other than that, I have a great relationship with them.
Does anybody have any questions about this bid?
The only question I have, and Jim, maybe you can answer this sort of a little bit with your, by the way, I had a little thing go on, so if I sound like I'm the wrong one, I'm not. There's nothing I can do about it right now. But I'm wondering if there's any, what's the thought as they start to take the siding off, for example, if they find that there's a lot more rot or there's a lot of other that wasn't built into the budget, how do we account for that in terms of what we have available for resources of dollars, or not having to have the project stopped in midstream or something?
Sure, it's a good question. That would be considered a change order, which I referenced earlier in my statement. Based on the cursory inspection that I've done and others have done, it does not appear to be any widespread rot, underlying rot. There is some very severely deteriorated shingles, so it is possible that we might find some. So there are 2 options at that point. We can either follow through with a change order and appropriate funds as such. So as part of this discussion tonight, we need to take into consideration what the available funds are in excess of the bid proposals. And the other option is that we can make those repairs in-house because it's outside of the scope of the bid. So I could choose to do those in-house, which would keep the cost down. The only drawback to that is it would need to be done instantaneously so that we don't delay the contractor from doing his part. So I think there are options available to us, but I can tell you, dealing with this contractor, if it's worthy of a change order, then he will seek one. If it's something that can be easily repaired, then I'm confident he'll do that as well.
Is there a drawback potentially, and I'm thinking in terms of the final work product that they do, or any potential aspect of the liability of the work product they do, if there was ever a change order to be needed, as you just said, and we did the work in-house, and then they went ahead and finished, for example, shingling over it, or siding over it, and then there was a problem underneath in the future. Because if we had to come back and ask them to help with the repair, they could argue, well, they didn't do such and such to begin with, it's not their due diligence to do it. So is there a downside to us doing anything in-house?
I don't see one, no.
Because whatever repairs we do, they're gonna put tie back or something over it, to cover it, and put the shingles or whatever we agree on.
Exactly. And I've been known, I think, that we don't cut corners, even if we do things in-house. So it will meet or exceed any code requirements.
And I'm.
It's a good question, though.
No, and I mean, I know what you do, and you're not gonna let anything that's substandard go by, I just didn't know if we had any, I'm just concerned about whether or not we had to have them do something that would be, you know.
Sure. It's a good question.
And I noticed in the bid, they talk about replacing all of the trim windows and all of it. Are they replacing all of it, or we're gonna try to keep?
We're gonna try to salvage as much as we can. Yeah, so
So
that's,
see if these rock,
Right.
you don't want to deal with that down the road.
Right. but the idea is to try to keep the overall aesthetics of the building as original as we can. And that means saving as many components as possible. But there are some that will have to be replaced. And, I'm sorry, the other thing is that because I have a previous relationship with this contractor, there's no doubt in my mind that if there's any question, he's gonna pick up the phone and call me. So I'm very confident that we'll get the best product, and we'll be able to save as much as we can of the original building.
Joe?
I agree, and Holly may jump in on this. The bid was also set up to allow unit cost items for cost capture. So we assumed that we were replacing all of the eave all the way around so that it's in the cost structure that you've received. However, if 80 feet of it is adequate, then that you don't spend that $16 per foot or whatever that unit one was. So, the bid is built for exactly this situation where we are in control, or you are in control of your money and decision-making on how to, where the best value to spend it is. However, you don't have to go back out and rebid each piece and capture the cost.
I was pleasantly surprised that the Cedar Shingles came in the way they did, 29,000 some change. So that's something that we need to consider, as whether we make a recommendation to the board of selectmen that they approve this contract with the condition that they do Red Cedar Shingles. I'm interested in your opinion on that because you'll be dealing with that down the road.
So if I may, I was equally as pleasantly surprised that the alternate was not only, but just under 30K. So what I've done, I'll speak on the pros and cons, okay? But what I did was, I wanted to make sure that the product was available because red cedars are tough to come by right now. So I made 2 phone calls. I made one to an independent supplier who's not affiliated with this project outside of this area. And there is enough product available out there right now to supply. I also called the contractor and asked them if their supplier had enough product if we decided to go with the alternate. And he confirmed that he does have enough. However, what I would recommend, as this discussion continues tonight, I would recommend buying all the product up front so that we're ensured that we have it, because the way the supply chain's been working, if we try to buy it as we go, we may find ourselves with not being having it available. So I would recommend that if we do this, that we buy all of it. And then Administrator Mullen can work. So when he sets up the contract, we can make sure that that product gets paid for initially. We have it here in our possession, in our control, so that we're ensured that we have enough to see this to do the whole project.
It's just that, along that line, we'll be able to store it here, we have a
Yes,
place to store, because I don't want it outside, you
No.
know, given.
now we would keep it inside under lock and key. In a place I won't disclose because they're very expensive. Now, as far as the maintenance is concerned, I know I've spoken somewhat adversely about using them. Obviously, from an aesthetics and a building value perspective, this is the way to go. The concern that I have is the ongoing maintenance that's required with Red Cedars. So this bid, as I understand it, includes the alternate for the material, but it doesn't include any finish on the material. Now, with Red Cedars, you like to put them up, let them bleed out before you do anything with them. So that's a cost that we're gonna incur before this building gets occupied. So we need to consider that. The other thing is that it's going to be an ongoing maintenance item that we're gonna have to work to fund probably every 8 to 10 years. So the only way I would support this is if we understood that and we were willing to make sure that we kept up with the maintenance so that we didn't end up in 80 years from now having the same situation we have now. So the problem with that, and I mentioned this to Administrator Mullen, is we can't budget for 10-year expenditures. We have to.
Jim may be retired.
No, I won't be retired. The cost will be incurred in that 10th year, so to speak. So we need to make sure that we do our capital planning appropriately so that we can get that done. What would the cost be for that? I'm gonna say that it'll be another maybe $10,000, $15,000 to stain and seal those shingles. So it's not an exorbitant amount of money, but it is in addition to what we have on the table now, so.
That's a nice lead-in for the historical side of it.
Right.
Because the cedar shingles are historically correct to be on that building. If we do vinyl on it, it loses its integrity as far as a siding for any kind of National Register designation, historic preservation. So I looked at the Secretary of the Interior's rehab standards, and it's like you have to replace it as best you can with the same materials in order to keep that integrity. That is a historic building. I'd love to see shingles on it, but realizing that it's a cost. But, going forward, that is a very important building to Dayton. So if at all possible, if we can keep it at the historic value that it has, to preserve it, with the cedar shingles, I think that would be pretty awesome.
I think along those lines, keeping that same theme for down the road, because this part is not related to this part of the funding, but if part of the intent is to go to the CPC, which it is, there's the context of the historical value in meeting their criteria as well.
Correct, because they also use the Secretary of the Interior.
They use the Interior Department of Interior, same regulation.
Right.
So that would fall in line, I have that here, we'll get that later for everybody, but that will fall in line partly with what we need to do, and if we change that integrity, we do run the risk of having a harder time, because that's gonna potentially be a very big ask.
Right, because I also looked at the CPC for their historical projects, and there is a component where the commission, Historical Commission, can declare that it is locally significant to, the town without being on the National Register or the State Register. And then that still is, I can't speak for the commission because the committee would have to come forward to the commission to ask us for that opinion. So.
Yeah, and that's, again, that falls within the
Right.
guidelines, I think
Right.
if we were to go with vinyl siding regardless, it's gonna change the integrity now.
Right,
That from the perspective of that document, it could,
right.
it could potentially run the risk of being removed.
So, and also with that building going forward, if we do the shingles on it, it's the process to get onto the National Register or to get that any kind of designation is a long process, and I was reading you know, some of the stuff. And I'm not even sure the building as it is would eventually get there. But that's not my call, that's not my area of expertise. Because I did reach out to the Mass Historical Commission and they suggested someone who was very familiar with historic preservation and the interior guidelines, if we could chat with them.
Jim, when you said the $10,000 to $15,000, is that for after the shingles are up for this year, for the staining and coating and so forth? And, or is that what you're projecting every 10 years?
Yes, it would have to be done probably just before occupancy,
Mm.
because the weather actually dictates the bleed out rate. But then it would have to be done every 10 years thereafter. So we're looking at a $45,000 to $50,000 increase from the base number if we go to red cedars. I know that I spoke, pretty sternly. I have to tell you, that's a pretty palatable number in my opinion, to actually get a red cedar shingle building, which keeps up with this authenticity. So I think it's worth discussion. I would like to hear what funds are available and what the funding sources are for this to see if it makes sense and what we intend to do with those funds. But I certainly think that it's something that I can support if we have the money.
And I would just add that, while I can't speak for the community at large, I speculate that people in the community take pride in their buildings and would get pushback if we put on the vinyl from people who would say, why did you do that?
Especially if they found out what the difference in price would be.
Exactly, we're kind of charged with making that decision, but I think the community at large and the library patrons, those who've been advocating for the building for so long, would opt on the side of the cedar shingles.
And a lot of the acceptance in the first place was the preservation of the building, right?
Do you think those shingles that are on there now are the original shingles? Do you think they've been replaced?
Well, original would be turn of the century.
Yeah.
It's quite possible, yes, because the way they have been weathered through, especially on the south side, they're probably original, yes.
In my lifetime, because I lived around the corner from that house since I was 5, I don't remember it being shingled.
But that was only 35 years ago.
You're right, thank you.
No, well played.
That's century. 19th century.
Yeah.
Are they able to, in the future, use CPC money to stain it 10 years down the road? That's a maintenance issue, I get it, so sometimes they're a little reluctant on maintenance.
CPC money can be used for maintenance if it relates to upkeep or reconditioning of an historical site or historical building. So it could be used. I think there would be more of a question down there, I'm just speaking on behalf of the CPC, in a sense that right now, going to the CPC for whatever it's gonna go for, it could extend for several years. And if that's the model it's gone to then, and then to come back in 10 years and ask for more money again from the CPC for other reasons, so some people may feel, well, you're gonna keep coming to us for this. Memories don't die in some cases. And it may be something that has to be allocated every 10 or 12 years, as Jim was suggesting, through the capital.
That's no problem.
Yeah,
That's definitely feasible, that type of investment, so I don't see any issue with that.
Is there any other opinions on whether to go with the vinyl or?
Joyce?
I mean, we're gonna talk about the facilities fund later, but
Yes.
that might also be
An option.
an avenue for the future
funding.
for
So just really to put this into dollars and cents, into dollars and cents, whole terms, right now, we, with the 150, the town meeting, approved, in June, plus the $200,000 we, have secured from the Commonwealth. We have a budget of $350,000. If we back out an amount of $248,232, which actually includes the shingles,
we will have a remaining contingency balance of $101,768, which was also envisioned to redo the parking lot there as well. If we go with the vinyl, we'll have a remaining balance, a contingency balance, of $131,000.
Except that from that 248, you have to add in another 15,000.
Right,
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah,
so we're down
So
to.
that one's down to about 85 roughly.
Right,
thank you.
And is 85 roughly enough to do the parking lot?
Well, my concern about the parking lot is that some of that parking lot we don't know.
That's a good point, we've since found out we don't own it all, so that
So we're
would
not
cost
going,
savings.
right, so we're not going to pay the part that we don't. We
How do
don't
we
know.
not own it?
Well, we would work to acquire it.
After we purchased the property, we had the land surveyed, and we don't, I think I counted 15 parking spots that, we don't have.
they're in your railroad layout.
Yeah, so we have,
How many?
60. So we have roughly 45.
Bear in mind, Brittany, no one's using those parking spots, they're our parking spots, but
yes,
we technically don't own the property.
And we have I think, in the future, we have an opportunity to get this land from the state.
yes, we should start that soon.
But right now, it doesn't make sense for us to pave it, we don't own it, so.
And isn't that where the rail trail, the trail might go?
It might, but also may go down Pleasant Street for an area, because there may be an issue further down on the railroad tracks, so we may not be able to use the railroad tracks, that part of it anyway. That's not what we're doing right now with the trail. So, we should take a vote, number one, if we want to accept the bid. And make
Yes,
a recommendation to the board of selectmen that, they approve this bid. Right, Joe? I mean, you're in favor of this, Jim?
Yes.
You two are
Yes.
players in this,
Yes.
and Holly. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the bid from, is it Plan B, is that the name of the company?
yes,
Plan B to do the exterior of the library and all the components that they've indicated in the bid. I'll entertain that motion. So
That's
motion's made.
including the shingles?
Not yet, we'll vote on that separately.
so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. I meant to say aye, I've been so busy asking for a vote. And I also unanimous. So the second part of this is whether or not we're gonna go with shingles, which I am supportive now. Given that price was a lot higher, if you remember, and it was 1,100 per square, we got 32 or 35 squares, and that wasn't counting labor. And now we're down to 29,000 including labor, so which is good. So I'll entertain a motion to that we go forward with this project and put cedar shingles on the exterior of this Smith Hall.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Friendly amendment,
Yes.
can we include that we purchase all the shingles upfront?
Yes.
And then we,
The saving is.
So, and to that into, would we also, like, in that motion also specify the bid price? So like, if hypothetically we go to buy the shingles and they jack up in price, we'd have, like, we'd be back in the drawing board.
Well, yeah, that's in the bid
I
doc,
think
right?
basically the shingles and the statement, not to exceed 50,000, something like that.
well, we're not voting on this thing.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a separate,
Yeah, November 30th, we want to lock this up, so.
So do we know what the figure is on the shingle? They gave us figures.
It's it,
Yeah, but isn't that also with the labor? No, that's
that's
just the
the
purchase.
increase from the original price to have red cedar shingles in place of the vinyl.
Right, but also the labor though, right? 'Cause
It's all inclusive.
It's all inclusive.
Like, labor was already there, but to some degree.
Yeah, either they're putting vinyl or they're putting,
Exactly.
but it's more intensive, as you know, the
Yes,
shingles putting
yes.
rest versus vinyl.
Yes.
So all that, those amendments that are now entertain that motion? So
We're good.
you're good, is there a second? Second. Any discussion? I'll call for a vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
opposed? No, it passes unanimously. Very good.
I'm so excited.
Congratulations to you all.
I know.
Mr.
It's
Chairman,
been a wonderful
do
thing.
we need to add?
Thank you, John.
Because for the purposes of the budget, do we need to add in a fee not to exceed for the cost of stay and so forth? Since that will be done the first year?
But that's not part of the bid itself, I mean, and I would imagine that we, as the library building committee, we do have control over the remainder of the budget, so we can appropriate that, at the other time it's.
And you would anticipate next fall?
At the earliest,
At the earliest?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, more
They
than-
all, once they're all installed, they have to weather uniformly.
Yeah.
And then we see how they bleed out, and then we make a decision at what time to stay, so.
The next agenda item is discussion of available grant funding, and I know, Jonathan, you've got some information for us, a couple of things, on a possible grant as well as, going to CPC.
Okay. So two things. One is, Ken, Jocelyn, and myself met yesterday and went over.
Yeah, you have handled,
I have, for the big part of the CPC, yes. I don't know how many people are in Ken.
I know, that should be
But I don't need one because I listen to it, so. And then for the other small grants, I have 2 copies here for now only. I think more to everybody, Ken has a trust
So
also.
everybody knows that everybody needs a copy of that,
No,
maybe Mike and maybe
would Jody,
Yeah,
maybe
share one.
Jody have a copy of that.
or maybe Jim, I can email this to you.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah,
You need another one?
This is
You're talking about the
one
grant?
green side, right?
Is that CPC?
CPC.
No, this is not, what I'm talking about is not.
It's also a grant, I'm not sure, I think Joe's gonna get involved in
Okay.
something.
So why don't we give this to Jim then too? Because that's for the small grant.
Yeah, maybe you're not gonna involve that.
So the small grant, Jocelyn could actually address more about what it is and where it's from. But the small grant, there's 2 possibilities of money, and they're exact dollars, it's not a deal. One is the option for 10,000, the other one is the option for 20,000. This is from, what's the,
It's the American Library Association and it's those small libraries.
so it's for rural library, so what I gave you there are the criteria for it. For the small libraries, which we do meet in this town. For every 25,000, it's the rural nature of the library. There's 300 grants available, 250, 10,000, 50, and 20,000. And this money is specifically earmarked on how you're gonna make your library accessible. But in this case, we're thinking of the interior only. So we're thinking, for example, a couple of possibilities here. The stage, the ramp that might go to the stage, including the railings, whether or not there would need to be a door or electric door there, and whether the cost on how that would be done, Jim, that would involve you. And then also, whether or not we can look at any other technology, for example, JAWS, which is the computer system that talks similar to what I use, or a laptop with JAWS on it, or other speaking devices, with devices for a person with, who's deaf and hard of hearing, for video translation, for SAP translation. We do have to have a public hearing, but that's after the grant is funded. Jocelyn has filled out, and Jocelyn can address this a lot more, she's filled out one of these in the past, but not for this particular type of project, but with the same organization a few years ago. So the entire application, it's not that complex to do, which is what Jocelyn has done with it before when I see. It's really about how we're gonna make the case for needing to meet the accessibility component of the interior of the library, access children and families. And I think we can do that fairly easily with Jocelyn and I, and with everyone else's input. CODs and Mike, of course, yours is the final approval on it, can make the case for it fairly simply. The deadline for the grant is February 28th. We get the funds, it's just, they were notified in April of 23, and we have, I think, until May 24 to utilize the funds and have our public meeting, if you will. So I think we have a really good opportunity for it. I think we have a super strong case, especially where we have a library that doesn't even have that accessible interior, combined with the historic value, combined with the fact that we had to close the other one because it didn't meet accessibility factors. So if you put all that together, I think there's a lot to offer going for this grant. Jocelyn, do you wanna?
Anybody have any questions about that?
Just in terms of like the narrative, like being able to sell it, would we try to scope out the new interior ramp and the cost to do that, and then like actually have that inform the grant application?
I think that would inform part of it, and that's where we would work with Jim to see what can be done in-house versus what can't. The grant, for example, the ramp itself may actually have to be longer than even the ramp at the old town hall now, or configured, or how it's gonna be configured or done. So we have to get the cost factors on that, Jim and I know what that cost to do as well. And if there's a door there going in it to keep it closed off, may need to be an electric door again. And the other factors I mentioned as well. This gives the interior, the biggest part of it is if we took pictures of what we left, as an example, Michael, because this is filled in number of character spaces for the entire application.
I hate those.
Which I do too, because you really can't expand, but we could also do it through pictures and show where we had to leave versus where we're going to.
We can meet those gaps in the letter, there are letters we can attach.
Okay,
And we can attach drawings,
Yeah.
photos, and so letters of support can cover that.
So if nobody has a objection, Jocelyn and I, we're gonna work on that with, hopefully Jim with his input, I'm sure, and whoever else's input we need, of course, and then to bring it back here for everybody to review, hopefully, our January meeting for a draft, so that if we have to make any changes, we can do it fitting in February.
Anybody have any questions?
So there are 2 tiers to this grant that I see,
Yes,
10,000 and
there's the
20,000.
10,000 or the 20,000. It's
So,
one or, yeah,
Have we discussed which one we're going to go for?
20.
20?
Because even if we, for example, Jim, let's theoretically, if the grant came in at 12,000 and a door at 3,000, that's 5,000 we can put towards technology.
Right. And it does say that if we're overlooked for the 50 awards for the 20, we'll be included in the 100 awards for the 10,000,
Correct.
or 250 awards for
Yes.
10,000. So
That's good.
Yeah,
There's also another grant round.
yeah, there'll be another round later, and they made that clear in the list of paperwork. I just didn't put every single document out.
Sure.
But I just wanted to give the key points
And
here.
this is open November through February,
February 28th.
so that would go with our timeline for being able to do work inside, so that works.
Yeah, especially where we don't even get approved until April, and the work doesn't have to be done until May 24th. So,
Oh, sorry.
Is there a matching or in-kind requirement?
no, not for this one.
So the only concern I would have would be the technology portion, because although I know, we should move fairly quickly once we get started, I wanna be realistic. The technology can't be implemented until we're open, right?
That's correct, and the technology part of it is really,
Not necessarily, because we can implement
Yeah.
some of those devices or software into our existing
Okay,
program and just move it over.
okay,
the speech software, for example, for that a person who's visually impaired could use or has any depth perception or dyslexia or anything, things like that. Those are just software that can be loaded in. And it may be really simply identifying a laptop that can be loaded in and set aside for those things.
okay.
So do we all feel that we should go for this grant? I don't think we need to take a vote on this, but looks like we all support this grant. You've got some information on CPC, or a member of the CPC.
Yes, so I'm a member of the CPC and Mr. Code is as well. And this is more, I guess, in the liaison role that either was to play, if you will. So I give you all new guidelines and packet for the CPC application process. And the goal of the people here who are familiar with this is to be much more transparent, but also get all of the information we need in a detailed manner. And Joe, it's my understanding that you'll be presenting to CPC and we'll bring this together.
Yes, that's in our scope.
You and
To
Holly.
pull together a very detailed package for the next phase, so.
So our hope for the CPC, and you can see on it, I can go back and forth with you guys, as many times as you can need to, by the way. Whenever you need, just let me know, we'll go back and forth with whatever we can do to help you through this, because as you can see, there's a lot there. I assume, have you done CPCs before, I assume?
Yes.
So we're hoping that for the initial application, you'll be able to present that to us with the chair here at our January meeting. So that we can look at it, if we have any questions or anything, revisions need to be made, so that you can come back in February and give us a much more detailed plan, budgets and so forth, how this is gonna be laid out in February and March, so that we have to vote on this by April in order to get it to the town warrant, which is at the end of May, first week in June. So the time frame for all that's required here is gonna be tight. The other thing that I will say, very frankly, is that because of the amount of the ask for a project like this, I think it's gonna be really imperative when we feel this strongly, I think, with the CPC, because this is gonna involve the bonding component probably, which many members of the CPC are not familiar with. And will take time to understand and absorb, because we've already had conversations in general about what bonding means and doesn't mean for the future of CPC dollars. And because we also all know that we have to be able to sell this, not a way, however way to put it, but that's the truth, at town meeting, and that's gonna include the bonding component of so many years forward. I think it's gonna be really important to make sure that we have every single component of this really put together as a solid plan for CPC. I know you know that, I'm just saying it out loud.
Jim, you have questions?
Yes, so I understand and thank you. January of 2023 is only 2 months away. Is this even feasible? Because we haven't even discussed as a group the inside of the building. We have some conceptuals from you, which we all agree that we like, and we've had some site visits and talked about it, but we've really not discussed or debated it. So am I presuming that everybody's okay with what's been presented, and this is gonna be a fairly easy process? Because it doesn't give us a lot of time to talk about it.
Yeah, I just don't think we have a lot of time, only because annual town meeting is in June. CPC doesn't like to go with the special town meeting in November, which kick it over to 24. And I really think that was
Well, let me-
delay everything.
So do we need a complete package by January? Do we need a complete package by January?
John.
What I was gonna say, Kim, just with the comment about the special town meeting, Mr. Pruitt can correct me, is that I think what we've sort of determined, what we've sort of determined now is that, yes, the town is used to having these things in the meeting, but our goal here is potentially to be able to fund year round if necessary. So that if we're able to go to town meeting in November and we had everything in September to get to the warrant, we're okay with that. It's not, we're not on we're on a fiscal year for funds in and funds out, but we're not on a fiscal, in a sense, on the way we have to approve it. So we could bring this forward a special meeting, because the information takes longer to put together, and not even consider it. We're good with that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what FinCom's position is gonna be. That's play a big part of the.
Don't misunderstand me, I'm not trying to delay it at all. I'm all for fast tracking.
You guys are very current.
If everybody's happy with what's been discussed so far, then great, this will be pretty fluid, but I just wanna make sure that's a tangible date, and we're going into the holiday season, so I just wanna make sure we're fully understanding that January is just around the corner.
Because there's no architectural renderings yet, are there?
I'm sorry,
There are no architectural renderings for the interior, renderings for the interior yet.
we have conceptual renderings, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The way that we intend to approach it with Schwartz Silver is it was an architectural sub. We have the building footprint, we have the conceptual layout, and we would start to build that out to a design development phase. In terms of what you can fit within the building, what will work, and then what could be priced. Possibly through our newest contractor, carpenter, and then what can be purchased. We, as your support mechanism, can certainly lay these features out. The key will be decisions on what is the right casework, what is the right layout.
That's my concern.
You know, we absolutely put together a concept that I often describe as, I hope you beat it up. Because that means you're into the details. Is this how we want it to work? Is this where we want the desks? Is this what we want for false work, ceilings, fans? The more we beat it up, the better price you're going to get. I understand Jim's point. We can put something compelling on paper, but if you then go approve it, that's what you're gonna get. You may have missed that window to have the debate and the input from
And I think
each
we have
stakeholder.
one chance to get this right. And I don't wanna fast track it just because of trying to meet town meeting and not beat up the details, which was well put.
What is the drawback in phasing the project with CPC and kind of narrowing the scope and then going back? Just so we have something.
I think the drawback to narrowing this up and going back is how it's gonna be paid for. Because if you're bonding it, if we're bonding the new part of this, we're only gonna get one shot.
Alright.
To bond it, we can't come back and ask for $500,000 bond this year for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and then come back next year and ask for another $800,000 bond for 6 or 7 years. I don't think that the town would go for that. Mike, what do you think?
The concept of bonding is new, so like you're right, it will be like an education. I mean, obviously, we would bond against the CPA budget.
Yeah.
The CPC budget, I mean, I mean, if you're thinking about from June to November, when the warrant actually opens and closes with the special town meeting, that's really just a blink away. I mean, like going from June to when the special town meeting warrant open and closes, so if it gives us actually a few more months to really dive into what exactly is it gonna be proposed, so we dot our i's and cross our t's. I mean, I think, I'm all afoot trying to get everything done as quick as we can. But I just think we need to be thoughtful too and make sure I actually have a really strong application that lays everything out exactly what we wanna do.
I think with the bonding process, what it's really gonna mean, because we're, in essence, we're freezing future CPC funds as they come in every year for X amount of dollars for the bond and the interest on the bond. So if the ask, for example, was $2 million and it's for 10 years, with the interest, you might be freezing $230,000 a year. That's gonna be tied up with CPC money that's already earmarked as it comes in. That potentially, that's a significant amount of what comes in every year for the next several years that the town's gonna be asked to vote on. So I think it doesn't make sense to do it at one time. The other thing, I had a thought in my head, and I'm sorry, it disappeared, was gonna be, what's the outside of the church is gonna be, or the church or the library, is gonna be finished when roughly?
Probably by mid next year, early. We put a 6 month, did we put 6 months?
Yeah,
180 days.
180 days,
I
yeah.
think it's the end of May.
Yeah.
Um,
So it'll be, yeah, but there's some work that we have to do too.
Yeah.
So I would say by mid next year, it'll be 100% complete.
So I guess what I'm saying is it's not imperative that we theoretically have to be able to go to June and start as of July. If we waited a few months and started in December, January, would that be okay? But how does that affect where you're at right now in terms of the trailer or the purchases, cost of that and so forth?
Yeah, it doesn't. However, in order for me to say that comfortably, I would not wanna lose that much time and do nothing on the inside. So I guess my question would be, are there any other funding sources that are available that I could do some work inside, either through in-house labor or through this contract?
We may have that 85,000, right, we may, and
Yes, yeah, we-
everything is,
Yep,
the ceiling and everything's paid for, was
Yeah, but that,
roughly 85,000.
wasn't that also gonna be used for pavement?
it is. So we'd have to prioritize exactly when we do the paving, do we put the paving out closer to when we actually are closer ready to open? And then have the area more, really like the staging area, in the meantime. There's another funding source, the Mass Cultural Council Facilities grant, which I know Josh is gonna bring up as well. That's an extremely promising, additional revenue here. Yeah, but other than that,
I'm leaning towards that approach, and as time goes on, if this committee says, yes, we nailed down, this is what we like the stage area to look like, these are the fit and finish, and we can get some of that stuff done with the available funding, I would like to tackle that and get going on it. We can leave the bulk expense, which in my opinion is, some of the infrastructural upgrades that need to be done inside, like the heating systems, electrical upgrades, and the furnishings. I don't want to rush to try and get that to an application without being well thought out.
so on that, I don't believe the furnishings themselves would be covered under CPC because they don't really relate to the historic preservation of the building itself.
Okay.
So we would likely have when we're at that point, either use grant funding, like a dedicated free cash funding for that.
Okay.
But one thing, if we actually keep the forward motion going, the information that we're gonna actually glean from the scoping out or beginning to scope out the interior work, is also, I believe, will help to inform the grant applications as well. That really can be more broad-based than the CPC application, so the scope information that we're gonna get out of, actually kicking this off now, will hopefully give us some preliminary information that we are able to use to apply for the grants that we are actually able to apply for over the next few months.
Okay.
So Jim, can you just go over your timeline? Do you see it for that building from now till completion? Let's just review that for a moment.
Sure. So as I understand, the selectmen are gonna act on our recommendation on the 30th. In speaking with the contractor today, I asked the question when mobilization could start. He told me 30 days from notice to proceed. So that will be in December, of course, right around Christmas. Probably a first of the year start for the exterior. That's also the same time that the current tenants will be vacating the space. So my hope was that if winter weather allowed, I wanted to get in and start to tackle the back room where we need to raise the floor system up. And either do that through in-house labor or try and use the bid, the contract, the water contractor. So I envision by the time if the funding's available, and I think that's why that's important that we prioritize, as you said. By the time the exterior is done, which is around May, June of next year, I would like to have the back room floor elevation finished, demoed, ready for fit and finish. The stage area mocked up, meaning the openings made, the ramp roughed in, and maybe even have the glazing installed for the stage area. So all that depends on the weather, the availability of labor, and the availability of funds. But I think it's definitely feasible in that time span to get to that point. Now, that doesn't give us an operable or a building that can be open. But if we can get all that done by May, and then we need to concentrate on the infrastructural upgrades, meaning the heat, air conditioning, electrical, lighting, fit, finish, painting, and the exterior ramp, along with the exterior modifications, then I think we could probably see a spring of the following year opening for that building.
Let's see, 24.
Right.
So we won't get the CPC money until November 23, you think?
If we go to the fall town meeting.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what people
Right.
are leaning towards.
But I learned something tonight that I wasn't aware of. CPC funding is not going to fund any of the interior furniture or components for the library. Now, as I understand, that's all modular, right?
So
I'm
modular?
not sure though, because aren't they gonna be bookcases against the wall that could be fixed if the,
That, off the cuff, yes.
And that's all store stuff, all stuff that's available to libraries through catalog, for lack of a better term?
Yeah.
Okay,
But is there a large budget for that? That's a much bigger footprint than what was available for floor to ceiling and edge to edge, so.
there's a point where I'm trying to make here. If you remove that from the CPC application, then I feel a little more comfortable about fast tracking it because really the inside of the building is what you have. We're not changing anything. We're working with what we have. So now if we're just gonna debate over the next 2 months, the location of services so that I know that we have a conceptual that could transform into actual, and we can talk about the infrastructural upgrades and get those beaten down. It's possible, I don't wanna speak for you, because you've got a lot of work to do by then, but, what are your thoughts? And I guess the question with CPC is, January to a June town meeting, do we need 100% turnover package by January, or is there some
No.
leniency with that?
Mike, if you all look at it right there, the January package is the initial application of concept.
So, yeah, but the wording here, like, I mean, and again, based on what we've been through with CPC wording, wording will matter. Like in the wording says for approval at the next town meeting, completed application should be submitted, no less than 4 months prior to the scheduled annual or special town meeting. So, yeah, I mean, the word completed application is there.
And we're referring to that, if you look at the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. That's why we're referring to the initial application.
So could plans come in between or during that 4-month period?
Yes, correct. The first thing we want to do, before we even look at all the plans, is determine from the application whether or not it meets the 4 different guidelines that we have to follow from the Department of Interior. So that's our first step, if you will.
So that's the eligibility phase.
Eligibility, correct. The eligibility was what we would want in January. That
That's
would be put together by Joe and Huck and you guys and maybe Jim Woodson input or Josh Olson input as well.
Okay.
And then once we get that to determine eligibility and make sure it meets the 4 guidelines, one of the 4 guidelines. And just the guidelines, when you look at them with the links and so forth here, when you have time to do it, they're pretty broad. We have a pretty broad brush for each of these guidelines to work with. If there's a question from the group here, from this committee, then the next time we meet, I can ask, through our chair, I can ask the person that we work with in the state for CPC to come and discuss this and bring it out further, so that everybody is very clear about what is and what isn't. He's happy to do that, he does that all the time on a local level. Stu comes out and can do this as a 15, 30-minute in-service, and I'm sure that would answer everything. But in the meantime, it's just the initial, yes, it's the initial application that we're looking for. The question I would ask for you guys, Joe, is hearing what Jim is saying about if it doesn't include, shelving, bookcases, all of those other things, do you still feel comfortable with a June a June deadline. Actually, it's more like an April deadline. Because that's when we have to approve everything to get it to warrant.
Right now I do. We will move on a singular path, whereas we're preparing backup, or we're preparing the details associated with this application. We're actually also preparing specifications for a contract. And that degree of detail, so that it's one path forward for us.
So, that means we're gonna have 2 meetings to put this application together. And there are quite a few things that we need to discuss. So that does help, and I think based on the timeline that we just talked out, thanks to Pat's question, I think we have to get it in for the annual, in order for this to all work. So I think we need to stay with the annual, but that only gives us 2 meetings to get this application to a point where it gets over. And there's a lot of discussions that need to take place between now and then. So, and having a special meeting or additional meeting during the holiday season, I don't know how that's gonna work, so.
So what is the date of the CPC's January meeting? Is it late in the
It's
month?
late in the month, yes.
Was it third
It's
Thursday?
the third Thursday, but if we had to, we can go to the 4th. I'm sure we can change the date of the meeting if we need to go to it later in the month, I don't think that itself.
But the 4 months,
But we have, so January, February, March, April. So January would be the initial application.
January 19th is what
Right.
we said, so.
We'll call it January 26th for argument's sake, let's assume we extend it.
Right.
And then in February, we would get it back, because it says we want 14 days to review the initial application, if you will, the eligibility, to determine whether you're eligible. So we'll let you know within 2 weeks. We'll meet separately, review it, let you know if we're able to go forward, which I'm sure, with the understanding of everybody, it will be. That's why I'm thinking if it will help for the application to have Stu come to one of these meetings.
so
I just have a question, does it have to come, and I think you're on the same thing, but to the historical commission?
yeah, that was my exact question, because in order to qualify to go to CPC, we have to have the buy-in and approval from the historical commission
Correct.
before.
Right, and we meet the second Tuesday in January.
And you would want to look at this initial application as well, the eligibility, so that you can determine the language you want to use to submit as part of the application.
Joe Holly, what do you think, in terms of timing?
Spitball on that one? We
You want to go home for Christmas?
put together as compelling an application, that I believe is serviceable, and I think would initiate the discussions that these various committees and boards would want to have.
Okay.
With some of the infrastructure pieces, and the reality is that I don't believe the boards or committees will get too involved in air handlers and air exchangers. The important thing is the dollar sign associated with
Yes.
these boxes, so
Yes.
we won't spend too much time
Yeah,
detailing
yep.
that. They
No,
are
but-
foundational to the success of a preservation project.
Right, but we haven't even discussed is the locale of where we said services are gonna be, something that this committee is agreeable to, because then we need to decide what type of systems are we putting in. Are we putting in ducted systems? I don't wanna use ductless, because I don't wanna take away from the interior aesthetics of the building. Those are discussions we haven't even had yet.
And a lot of those are addressed in the Secretary of Interior's
Right,
guidelines,
right.
yeah.
So, we're gonna do a ducted system, we need to know the end use of spaces in the building, we need to kind of have a layout, how the space is gonna be, so that we can put the infrastructure in. And that's all cost related, so, I mean,
There is a link in here to the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, but I can also forward it to everybody separately tomorrow. So nobody has to go searching for any of it too.
Mr. Chairman, I know this isn't on the agenda, but maybe I'll fit a little better if I got a consensus from everyone here, if they've looked at the conceptuals, they visited the site. Are there any cliffhangers or roadblocks that you can see about what our vision is so far?
There are a couple of members that have not.
Okay.
I'm sure you've been there years ago.
No,
I
see,
went,
no, we,
yeah,
yeah, we went,
Yeah,
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 yeah, we went.
okay.
Yeah.
You have, you know, you worked on the week, so it's. I'm just wondering what you, when we get to that point, if you should all just leave at the library.
I also think the
Well,
library staff has a lot of input on the conceptuals of where the spaces are gonna be and what their functions are.
Our next meeting is at the library, I mean, at the new library.
Yeah, we're gonna run out, obviously, by the church, because it's gonna be there, but I.
Yeah, and we can write the drawings.
We can, yeah, we can distribute the drawings tomorrow. We certainly have them here in paper, not that we would have wanted to look at them and make a decision tonight. But see, get a sense of some of the preliminary work that has been done, that has gotten us to date. We've got them, if anybody would like to look at them towards the end of the meeting. And then we will distribute electronically.
We want to do this right.
Yeah, no,
I certainly don't want to delay another year, but I want to do this right.
Do you want me to see if Stu can be available at our next meeting or the meeting after that, after the walkthrough, to help get the language correct that we want on this initial application completely? He's more than happy to help with that. Stuart is the state advisor for CPC.
So I mean, I'm just really speaking out loud here, but I think all of us, we've either been through the CPC, like we already know the process we need to like go through, like. And yeah, I'm happy with what we know now. What we know and anticipate the process really to be.
Yeah, and I think that, thanks, Jonathan, I think it's a great resource, but I think once we put it together, if the town administrator needs to fine tune it and have a discussion, I'm sure he'll take a call from the town administrator.
Okay.
So do we wanna schedule our next meeting then, assuming that the church is, I don't know if they have something on Wednesday nights, I don't know why. I think there was something on Wednesday.
I can probably ask her if you guys come up with a date.
Yeah, she's always accessible. The only thing, the first
It's December 21st.
Wednesday in December, I have like school meeting.
Fourth thing to be on selectmen's meeting.
And I mean, like, if we could reconvene fairly soon to give Joe and Holly enough time to put something together.
Can we hold a special meeting, are we able to do that?
Yeah, we can meet whenever we wanna meet, especially if we're gonna meet at the library. We don't have to worry about space in the town hall, so. So we can pick a different day, the sooner it's convenient for everybody.
November 24th.
I was like, what is it? Very convenient.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Have fun.
You know, it's,
The week after, for many of us, is already turning into a hairy week.
I know.
How about either Monday the 5th or Tuesday the 6th?
Library is open on Mondays, so it's difficult for us to get there.
Tuesday the 6th?
That's better, yes.
That was December 6th, then,
I think that works.
that's my daughter's 49th birthday. We have a party that weekend, so.
Tuesday, December 6th,
Mhm.
at what time? 6?
Give you enough time. Be done.
Well, I'll just be a little late, like I was.
How about 6:15?
6:15, so I just,
Okay.
it's important that you.
Tuesday, December 6th at 6:15, all right, I'm gonna ask her right now, okay?
And I will put it in for 6:15, not 5:30. I always put these meetings for 5:30.
Then get there my time.
Actually, Jonathan thankfully saved me today. As always.
That was Leanne,
Everyone will know that.
Is there any advantage to having the chairman of the CPC meet with us or not? Is that appropriate or not appropriate? I don't know.
My honest answer is I don't think so. The town administrator can disagree with me if he would like to, feel free. I think that he and I are on the same page with how this has to be. We've both gone through the same training.
Yeah.
We're both equally aware of how the process needs to go. But if members here would like to have Kevin, I have no objection to that.
Kevin's busy, so it's fine.
Do we anticipate that this meeting might go till 8 o'clock?
It's possible.
Tonight?
Sort of,
No.
no, I'm talking about that meeting, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to react so strongly.
Mike's gonna be.
No, next meeting, just so that you let her know, because I think we've got a lot on the agenda.
Yeah, she might overspoke, because usually she gets back to me in seconds, but she's obviously busy, so. I think we can tentatively set it
I
up.
think we can
and then we'll do
tentatively
that.
set up for that, if it's a change, let us know. And everybody has a rendering, the concept drawings that everybody's taking a look at those, right, so that.
Yeah, and I think Joe said doing them.
We'll recirculate them tomorrow, and then we'll definitely bring the large ones on the board to the meeting.
Is there anything else, before us?
Thank you, everybody, for
Do you wanna talk about the facilities grant that was last?
Mass Cultural Council offers an annual grant. And the application process just opened and, November. And, it's due, I believe, also in February 2nd.
Yeah, that's right, Jess, yeah.
Yeah, money would be awarded notifications would go out May 23. So basically, you have to be a nonprofit cultural organization, a municipality that owns cultural facilities, which is what we are. So we meet those criteria, but there's a few different grant categories. They have a capital grant, which they haven't announced the cap, but it's in the $200,000 range. And they consider new construction, additions to an existing structure, renovations and repairs to an existing structure, fixed or integrated equipment, any combination of the above. They also have feasibility and technical assistance grants for costs and expenses related to planning if we need Joe and Holly for longer than we think. We can get up to $35,000 for that. And there's also a systems replacement plan grant, which it's a capital needs assessment of the building and its mechanical systems, which is like $7,000 to $12,000. And there are certain combinations that we can apply for. So if we get a capital grant, we can also go for the feasibility and technical assistance grant. We can go back to the well every other year. You just have to take a year off from applying. We do have to have a match, which I believe, I think so. It's not, I need to check to see if that 200,000
The
coming from the
150.
state.
No, the 200 that came from the state, which is not local funds, right? If that's
Well,
considered.
no, they prefer local funds over
Right.
state funds.
Right.
So, but then we have the 150.
Yeah.
Right.
At least get. So,
I wonder if they would consider continued CPC money.
I think they do consider CPC as an eligible match. But we have to have it in hand, like we would have to have it now in the application process. They wanna make sure that we have that funding in place. the project must be an eligible project, we have to demonstrate community need. We can demonstrate that it will benefit tourism in the local area, which I think we can do. We've had people visit and use our facility.
We can collect visitors right up, Hope Bay.
Yeah, that's my plan. Well, we've had builders come and use the library before, so it's all in there. Demonstrate a financial need and demonstrate local support. I think we can check off all the boxes with a little elaboration on some. So,
What was that deadline for that grant, sorry?
February 2nd.
Okay.
I haven't been in the application to know or to see how detailed it was. I don't think it's terribly onerous.
Do you want some help with it?
I'll take help.
So what we're doing for CPC, I mean, is inevitably gonna help inform how we apply for that as well. So like one thing, yeah,
Once you have all
Perfect
that
timing, yeah.
information, you don't use it for everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if this is something, I mean, I can check more specifically to furnishings and the soft features for this to see if maybe this is a next year thing, since it's only every other year.
Right.
Jocelyn, would ALA have grants for furnishings?
I can look, I don't
I just thought of that.
know, I've seen another like for solar, like specific sorts of things, if we wanted to put some in the parking lot.
Justin, if you could forward that to me. Take a look at the application.
So I mean, if we're thinking about the timing of all this, like if we were to wait and do it next year rather than this upcoming cycle, we would miss the spring 24 opening that we talked about earlier. I'm actually wondering because we don't have a dedicated furnishing fund, way to fund that yet. I'm spitballing here, but if we're focusing on CPC, like in our current budget for the real infrastructure, maybe does it make sense to really focus the furnishings on this?
We rolled
I'm
out,
throwing it out there.
we rolled out the gift fund.
The gift fund is ruled in. I spoke with our town accountant on that, and the $50,000-ish from the gift fund is definitely in.
So February deadline, what is the issue, what date and issuance?
I think they notify in May 2023.
So that
I see what I
would,
mean.
so that would push it to a fall opening if we use that to do some final, furnishings and stuff, so. Not to say that we might not need that extra time, I wanna be clear here, but, I think it's plausible that we get to the spring of 2024.
We can probably do a wraparound of some of the things that you're gonna be working on, some of the, I think they would be happy to fund new HVAC if it's needed, elevators.
Right,
Things
elevator's
like-
off the table right now.
Well, I know right now, I'm just saying, this is something that we can keep.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I guess,
Downstairs for the, downstairs for the future or something too.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with Mike, I think a lot of the discovery that we're gonna do for the CPC, we can use for that grant. So,
That piece, the rounded section of the building where they put in a stairwell, repairing that so that it returns to it, whatever former
right,
place. There are things that we can do
Right.
for this.
okay.
So if we budgeted for the modular, is that
It's budgeted in FY 23 already.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we'll do the same thing for 24. It's holding up. Literally.
Is there anything else we need to discuss? She hasn't asked them already asked.
No, she must be busy.
So,
Maybe that tells us she has things going on at Wednesday.
yeah, this, I thought she had some kind of a mask, but it might be like a Zoom, Wednesday or something. Okay, if there's nothing further, then ask for a motion to adjourn. I can make it.
Motion to adjourn.
For a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
One more minute,
Opposed?
Yes.
Guys, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Very helpful.
All my material.
hopefully it's on the shelf.
Yeah, hopefully it's tomorrow.